So there is the widespread accusation that the causal premise of the kalam is in some sense incompatible, or at least in serious tension with the concept of libertarian free will, that you cannot, or can only with great intellectual difficulty, hold to both. So this is actually a kind of ad hominem argument that lets a person choose whether she wants to hold to the causal principle of the kalam or to the idea of contra-causal free will. So let's take a closer look at the issue. Let's analyze what the causal premise tells us, what the implications and entailments of libertarian free will are, and how both relate to each other, so that we maybe can see if there are any difficulties for those who hold to both of them. So, of course, the original causal premise of the kalam states that whatever begins to exist has a cause, or formulated more rigidly, for any x, if x is such that x begins to exist, there is some cause C that brought x into existence. That is, if x is understood to be an object or substance. Or, for any event E that involves some x beginning to exist, there is some cause C that at least partially initiated E. That is, if we want to understand the premise as a proposition about events, not merely objects. And here, the idea is that the event is not identical to just the beginning of some x's existence, means that we can only infer a partial cause, but that's rather useful for the further going argumentation. But now we have to turn to libertarian free will and ask ourselves what kind of conflict there might exist between various theories of libertarian free will and these causal principles. Let me formulate the relevant conditions for libertarian actions that correspond to agent causal theories, non-causal theories, and event causal theories. So for agent causal theories, it holds that some agent P's causing of P's action A at some time t is causally underdetermined by any simultaneous or previous states or events. So the agent's cause is itself completely deterministic, and yet it functions analogous to some kind of prime move that is itself at least partially uncaused and therefore globally causally underdetermined. For event causal theories, it holds that some agent P's causing of P's action A at some time t causally underdetermines the exact nature of A. So there is some fundamental indeterminism embedded within the process of decision forming that the agent undergoes, so causal indeterminism is the root source of libertarian indeterminism here. For non-causal theories, it holds that some agent P's causing of P's action A at some time t is devoid of any direct causal origin, which is the strictest view of contra-causal free will in that it strictly rules out any even partially causal origins of free actions. Now, all accounts share the same commitment to some action A occurring, but what exactly is some action A? What do we mean by it? By A, we surely mean some action A that the agent P can perform, not just any kind of event, so we can define A as the exercise of some pre-existent power or disposition of the agent P. Now, the powers or dispositions of people are grounded in biological functions, which means they all have their respective material causes, i.e., they are grounded in pre-existing objects. The same is true of the agents themselves and the agents causing of some action A, so to say, of the objects of decision-making themselves. Now, why is this important? Well, it's important because of this. Let's define the event of some agent P making a decision and carrying out action A, the event E of A. Then, whether or not agent causal, event causal, or non-causal theories of libertarianism hold true, in none of these cases does E of A involve the coming into being or the beginning to exist of any substance or entity or object, since all powers and dispositions exercised are grounded in pre-existing objects. So as we see, the conflict between the causal principle and the concept of libertarian free will is merely apparent. The causal principle references substances or objects and their coming into being, whereas libertarian accounts of free will reference powers and dispositions of pre-existing objects and/or substances. Additionally, the causal principle of the kalam needn't even be a deterministic principle, nor is it a general causal principle in the sense that it is an existential rule that predicates all causal interactions. Rather, its scope is limited to existential beginnings, and therefore it doesn't stand in conflict with contra-causal accounts of free will. Have a nice day.